Just a couple of quick announcements before we take you to the last talk of today. We've freed up some spaces for you on the Blitz during activities. So after this talk, if you want to sign up for the Blitz, you can just go outside and see the things at the desk. There's quite a few spaces that we've been able to get, so you can do that activity. Even if you've done it before or you've done any other activity, you can do this one again. Secondly, there's going to be the Star Time workshop. That's going to be taking place during activities in the lobby area outside, where the ping pong ball table and whatnot are. So you can, if you want to tie the star, there'll be Sings and Signia helping you to tie it, and there'll be some material. If anyone's got any extra material in their rooms that they want to help donate, please do so, because we've got a few, but we could always do it more. And I think that's enough of the urgent ones. I'm going to introduce you to Bibi Jaswant Kaur, who's a solicitor, and she's going to be talking about seva to us. So without further ado, I'll hand it over to her. Waheguru Ji Ka Khalsa.
Waheguru Ji Ka Khalsa. Waheguru Ji Ki Fateh. A handful of generations ago, someone in your family tree decided to become a Sikh of the Guru. And that has led to this camp here today, and you sitting here, discovering, questioning, trying to find out your own spiritual path. So what made that individual, that a few generations just behind you, make that decision to go up against centuries of belief, to go up against centuries of tradition and choose an entirely different path? The answer to that is Dhan Sri Guru Nanak Dev Ji Maharaj. What Guru Nanak Dev Ji did, prior to Guru Nanak Dev Ji, there was always religion, there was always spirituality. But what Guru Nanak Dev Ji did was he brought a spiritual revolution that's reflected in social reform. And that's the unique aspect of Sikhi. Bhai Gurdas Ji talks about Guru Nanak Dev Ji as a conquering hero and a roaring lion. And he said that when Guru Nanak Dev Ji came, Satguru Nanak Pargatya, Miti Dhund Jag Janan Hoya. Prior to Guru Nanak Dev Ji, there was confusion, there was fog. People lived in a constant, perpetual state of duality. And when Guru Nanak Dev Ji came, he brought clarity to the world. And what was that clarity that Guru Nanak Dev Ji brought? He brought an entirely new way of thinking, an entirely new way of being, an entirely new way of looking at your responsibilities, interacting with the world around you. And often Sikhi is looked at in the context of, people say Martha Sarabanthalaya, and people think of it in terms of Hinduism and Islam. But what Guru Nanak Dev Ji was in fact doing was he was rejecting Western philosophies and Eastern philosophies, and he developed Sikhi, which is an entirely different path to those two philosophies. Now, Western philosophy is very much based on Christianity, and Christianity is based on you have a creator and you have a creation, and depending on your actions, you'll go to heaven and hell. And Eastern philosophy was based on who you were born to. So who your parents were, where you were born, the location of your birth, dictated what tribe you belonged to, in whose house you were born, where the sun was, where the moon was. All of these things were all surrounded by your actual birth. And whatever you were to achieve in your life, what you were to eat, what you were to drink, where you were to eat, where you were to sit, with whom you were to eat, all of these things were dictated by who you were born to. And even till today, looking at the caste system in India, even what job you can do is dictated by that caste system, and even to the extent where your spiritual development or lack of is determined by those factors. Now in Sikhi, Gurbani tells us that, in fact, this relationship between creator and creation is a myth. In Gurbani talks to us about how we are all a divine spark of a Galpur Maharaj, and how our ultimate goal, our ultimate want in life, if you like, is to realize that and become one with Maharaj, Galpur. And Guru Gobind Singh Ji in Dasam Granth talks about how Galpur Maharaj is the fire and we're all the sparks, and ultimately the sparks go back into the fire and you can't distinguish between the two. And we know this because Guru Nanak Dev Ji tells us that this is the divine message. It's not an interpretation, it's not biased, it's the divine message of Galpur Maharaj. And Guru Nanak Dev Ji says, "Jaise mein aave kasam ki bani, tasra kari gyan velalo." That as the message has been told, that's how I've relayed it. So in Sikhi then, if it's not dictated, there is no creator-creation relationship as such, and it's not dictated by who you're born to, and where you're born, and astrology or any of those things. So what do you have in Sikhi then? The only currency in Sikhi that we have is our actions and our deeds. Those are the only two things that you have. So, to begin to understand what the message of Guru Nanak Dev Ji is, we'll go right to the beginning and look at the term Nanak itself, the name, Guru Nanak Dev Ji's name. Now, Anak, the second part of Guru Nanak Dev Ji's name, means duality. So you have something and you have an opposite. You have something and you have an alternative, or you have a parallel. The first part of Guru Nanak Dev Ji's name means no, so no duality. You have something that's complete, you have something that's whole, that has no alternative, that can't be paralleled. Guru Nanak Dev Ji, and in essence that's the message of Sikhi, is this wholeness, it's this completeness. And if we were to, when we do Prakash of Guru Granth Sahib Ji Maharaj, what's the first word or letter you would see? Ik. One. Again, the completeness, the wholeness. This is what is one of the most fundamental aspects of Sikhi. Now, how is that reflected then? Okay, so we've talked about wholeness and we've talked about completeness. That is reflected. If that's what the Guru says, how is that to be reflected? If that's the Guru Granth, then if we're the Guru Panth, then surely that should be reflected in us, in our actions and our deeds. What are three main principles that Guru Nanak Dev Ji talked about? Or Guru Nanak Dev Ji, the three main schools of thought? Okay, so Nam Japana, Kirt Karni and Vanshadana. So I'm sure you've spent a lot of this camp talking about Nam Japana. What about, what's Kirt Karni?
Honest living.
And what does that mean? What's an honest living? Hanji? And how do you earn that honest kamai? Is it just about the way you work?
Do not cheat. Do not cheat.
To not cheat people, okay?
Do not
Be truthful. All of those things are all 100% right. But an honest living also entails things like fair trade.
yeah.
To wear and eat things that are from sources that haven't been exploited. So it's very, very cool these days, or very sort of middle class to talk about fair trade. So you go and you buy your fair trade products from the shop, fair trade bananas and this and that. 500 years ago, Guru Nanak Dev Ji is talking about honest living, non-exploitation. So the clothes that you wear, the things that go into your body, whatever you eat, needs to come from sources that are honest. And how many of us make the effort to even find out the stuff that we're eating, or the clothes that we're wearing, or the things that we're watching have come from sources that haven't been exploited? And Vanshakana, we kind of limit it to the swand, taking out 10% of your earnings. Or asi Vanshakana, asi the swand kadaya. Now the swand, in this country, for those of you who are old enough, you pay tax. Yeah, on your earnings. You pay tax on your earnings, you pay income tax, you pay council tax, you pay all types of taxes. Now, to live in this society, you pay that. I don't think of my next door neighbour when he pays council tax as being a good person or charitable or any of those things. That's what you have, that's the bare minimum you do to live in this society. And that's what the swand is. That's the bare minimum. If you want to belong to this society, this group of people, you want to follow this guru, that's the bare minimum you do. And even within that, we all limit it to maya, money. So, you earn this much, 10% goes to good causes. But is that what it's supposed to be limited to? Or is it supposed to be 10% of your education, 10% of your knowledge, 10% of your time, 10% of your energy? How many of us can honestly say we give one day every 10 days to seva? So surely it's only now that people are starting to think in the last 100 years or so in terms of financial, what you have is financial, it's money. The time of Guru Nanak Dev Ji, you didn't necessarily have an income as such. If you had food, you'd share it. If you had a house, you'd share it. We don't think in those terms anymore. We've gone so far away from the path of what Guru Nanak Dev Ji wanted for us. And today our thoughts are very much on almost Western concepts of charity. I take out this much money, I give it to that cause, that's my this one, my one shakya. Everyone in this room has a skill, everyone in this room has a certain level of education that could be shared. Why is it always limited to Maya? So within this Vanshakana and Kirtkani comes Seva. And Simran and Seva are two foundation stones upon which you build your entire Sikhi Jivan. And it's often referred to as a bird. And your Simran and Seva are your two wings. So if you have one without the other, you may flap around for a while, but ultimately you're not going to fly. And that's why Seva has such an importance in Sikhi. And we've narrowed it down hugely. At the beginning of this, on the PowerPoint, we looked at, the pictures up there on Seva, and we do tend to limit it to the Gurdwara. So, Seva we do at the Gurdwara, that becomes our 10%, or it becomes, our Kirtkani or Vanshakana. Now, any discussion on Seva will never be complete without mentioning Bhai Kanhaiya Ji. And Bhai Kanhaiya Ji, I'm sure all of you know this Sakhi, and I presume I don't have to go into it. Now, Henry Dunant was the founder of the Red Cross. 100 years prior to him, we had Bhai Kanhaiya Ji. And Bhai Kanhaiya Ji, in its most simplest form, I'll tell the Sakhi, during the times of Guru Gobind Singh Ji, when Maharaj had battles, after the battles he'd have people who were wounded and people who were thirsty on the battlefield. And Bhai Kanhaiya Ji would give them water and would administer first aid. And that's what the Red Cross was set up for victims of war, humanitarian aid for soldiers. And when the Singhs saw Bhai Kanhaiya doing this, they questioned him. And they went and then they questioned the Guru, Guru Gobind Singh Ji, and they asked him and said, well, you know, we're fighting these huge jungs and Bhai Kanhaiya Ji is walking around after giving water and first aid. And when Bhai Kanhaiya Ji was asked by the Guru why he's doing this, Bhai Kanhaiya Ji's response was, well, Maharaj, I see you in everything. Bhai Kanhaiya Ji is in tune with the wholeness in this completeness he spoke about. Bhai Kanhaiya Ji doesn't know any other way of being. It's not an option. It's not, you know, oh, I think I'll do this. It's just his natural way of being. So seva is an attitude as much as it is an action. We've limited it to actions. Okay, if I do this, it's a seva. If I do, but it's your, you know, you can do seva in that form. But Maharaj tells us that actually it's your attitude that you bring to seva that's hugely important. So we all know that Guru Nanak Dev Ji said to us, Grihastha Jivan is hugely important. Grihastha Jivan vich reh ke we basically live our Sikhi Jivan. Now, the reason for that was so that we didn't go off into the jungles and we didn't go off into the mountains and just meditate. We engaged in society around us. But what we've done today, there's another form of that. We've limited ourselves to our families. Because our forest and our mountain has become me, my partner, my children, my parents. It's the same thing we're doing. We've just hidden behind so-called Grihastha Jivan. We don't engage in society around us. We don't think to improve society in any way. We're happy if my family's okay. I don't care about anyone else. Mere nyane theek ne? Theek hai. You know, my kids are getting a good education or whatever is important to you. As long as I've got that, I'm happy. Is that what Guru Nanak Dev Ji talked about when he said Grihastha Jivan? Or was it about the society around us? The reason that Bhai Gurdas Ji describes this as such a difficult path is because this is the in-between. It's not the running off into the mountains and running off into the forest to meditate, and it's not overindulgence. What we've done now, we've consumed ourselves with so-called family obligations, and what we need and what we want are two different things. Our need has grown to such excess levels that we're consumed day and night by our family life, if you like. But what you actually, so that's your want, but what you actually need is very limited. So the path between running off into the forest and running off into the mountains and overindulgence, that's the path that is so difficult to tread. This again is a very famous painting, and many of you know this Sakhi. While Guru Amar Das Ji would be returning from Khadur Sahib to Goindwal, the journey he would do every day, he would, his seva for Guru Angad Dev Ji would be to bring jal from the river Byas for Guru Angad Dev Ji's Ishnan every morning. And Guru Amar Das Ji did this for many, many, many years, and one morning as he was doing this, he was taking the picture for the Amrit Vela Ishnan, and there was a storm, and along his way he fell outside a particular person's house. It's a weaver. They make baskets, him and his wife, and they hear this roll outside, and the Sakhi says that the husband and wife have a conversation amongst themselves, and the wife goes, "Oh, did you hear that? Can you hear that noise?" And she asks her husband, "Who is it?" And her husband says, "It's Hona Kona is Amar Das. He's wandering around again this evening." He goes, "Natama." Natama means homeless. The homeless Amar Das is wandering around. Or, who else is it going to be? So go back to sleep. When Guru Angad Dev Ji hears this, Guru Angad Dev Ji is so overwhelmed with emotion for Guru Amar Das Ji, and he holds him and he says to him, my Amar Das is in the Thaamyan da Thaam, the home of the homeless. Ne Ortyan di Ord, ne Asryan de Asre. So people who have no other support, who have no other refuge, they come to the house of Guru Amar Das Ji. When you're homeless, you have nothing, even your dignity has been taken away from you, then Guru Amar Das Ji is going to give you your dignity, he's going to give you your refuge, and he's going to give you your home. So if that's the message of the Guru, how many of us live that? Or how many of us even think that that's an important aspect of our lives, that the Guru had the Thaamyan da Thaam, ne Ortyan di Ord, ne Asryan da Asre. Then what are we? Are we the support of anyone who needs it? Do we provide? I mean, how many of us are actively engaged in any of these concepts of homelessness or, 101 issues that the world has? So again, we can be as insular as we like. Get up and do my Amrit Vela, do my Kirtan. I'm happy, I go to the Gurdwara Tika, I'm happy. I've done my bit. But is that all that it was limited to? Was that all that was needed? If I was to ask you what are some of the major problems in the world today, what would you say? Think globally, think, the entire world. Poverty? War? Resources? Okay. Poverty. One of the most basic and fundamental human rights after the right to life is the right to food. Forget, freedom of speech and freedom of religion and all the other human rights that come after that, because you don't have food to put in your mouth. None of that matters. When we think of seva, we often think of langar, and rightly so, and so we should. Langar is one of the cornerstones of Sikhi, we all know, langar as the place that it doesn't matter who you are, where you come from, you sit and you eat together, and it's the ultimate sign of equality, especially looking at it in the context of India itself within the caste system, not sharing your food and not sitting and eating with someone. So we all know that. Okay. Now, langar takes on a totally different aspect when you think of 15 million children every year dying of starvation. It's langar for you and me to go to the Gurdwara and say, I don't want that dal, I'll have a bit of that sabji, 5 or 6 nice things to eat. Or was it meant for something entirely different? Now bringing it to the context of India, a recent report by the government called the Arjun Sen report looked into poverty in India, and it says that 77% of Indians live on less than 20 rupees a day. 77% of Indians live on less than 20 rupees a day, which is what, 28p? That's more than 3/4 of your population. And this Arjun Sen report, I've been fortunate enough to spend a considerable time in India, and one of the things that I managed to do was travel. I spent 6 months traveling across India, and I went, while this report was being collated, I went to a place called Chhattisgarh, and it used to be Madhya Pradesh. It's a state in the middle of India, and there 60% of the population is tribal. And when I say tribal, I mean indigenous, I mean what you would consider Aborigines in Australia. 60% of the people who live in Chhattisgarh live in mountains and they live off the natural resources. They're the indigenous people of India. And when I went there and this Arjun Sen report was going on. These are people who, I mean, their lifestyle hasn't changed hundreds of years. No electricity, they don't believe in electricity, they don't believe in a sort of, modern amenities. They live off the land and they consider the land sacred. And 60% of that state are people who are tribal. And when I went there, the person from this Arjun Sen committee had come out, and I spoke to them, and I asked them, so what kind of questions did he ask you to see if you fall within this poverty bracket? And he said, they asked us, do you eat meat? And he said, well, yeah. And I said, right, obviously you're not poor. And I said, well, did he ask you what kind of meat? Rats, pigeons, anything they can find. But because they live off the land and that's all they can find, they're not considered to be poor. Because, fine, I've ticked the box, you eat meat, you must be rich enough to afford meat. Now, bearing all that in mind, even their own report says that 77% of India lives on less than 20 rupees a day. You have half the children who will grow up in India are so malnourished and have so many health problems, and you have a generation of Indians, millions of Indians who will grow up with disabilities, severe disabilities. Someone mentioned war. The politics of food leads to war. When you don't have enough food to feed yourself, let alone your family, you have no other option but to go to war, in whatever form that may take. According to the Home Minister, 220 districts within India out of 640, that's 1/3, are, and to quote him, under significant level of armed struggle. A significant level of armed struggle. 1/3 of India is in a significant level of armed struggle because there's no food. So when you're told, someone might have some knowledge and say, okay, this happened to the Sikhs, this happens in Kashmir. What we don't understand is the same place I spoke about Chhattisgarh. You have these tribal people who live off the land, and you have multinational companies like Tata and Bajaj and other sort of huge companies that go in and they want that land because that land is very minerally rich. So what they do is they say these tribal people, they've joined the Naxals. The Naxals it's a huge movement throughout India that is based on the poor fighting up and rising up against sort of huge rich companies and rich people. And these people, they haven't joined the Naxals. They don't have food to put in their mouth. So if someone comes to you and you don't have chapliyan and says, here's an AK, let's fight, what are you going to do? It's not some big ideology, it's not some big understanding, it's I don't have food to give them. When you have to look at your child, looking at you because they're starving, what choice do you have? 1/3 of India is in armed struggle, according to the Home Minister. So we talked about natural resources, some of the problems in the world. Someone mentioned war, someone mentioned poverty. Now, ironically or significantly, that 20 rupees that people live off, that same 20 rupees was what Guru Nanak Dev Ji started the langar with. It was 20 rupees that his father gave him when he started the langar, and the first time that he fed the sadhus, and that's the same 20 rupees that people earn today. So when we talk about langar in the context of chips and beans and this and that, all of these things, all these lovely dishes when we go to the Gurdwara, that's led us to have diabetes and all this. Is that what langar was? Or was langar to feed the thousands and millions of people around the world in India? Do you think Guru Nanak didn't see all this? Didn't see how people were suffering and started the langar? Now, in Sikhi we say, oh, we don't believe in fasting. Oh, that Maharaj doesn't believe in fasting. Maharaj is saying to you, when fasting is an option for a rich person, choose a day not to eat it. Sikhi is so practical. Maharaj is saying the people, 77% of people, from the moment they are born to the moment they die, are fasting. They're starving to death. You're going to talk to them about, don't eat on this day and you'll receive spirituality? Sometimes, we've made Sikhi so unobtainable or so outside. It's practical. You don't fast because you maybe have that option, someone else doesn't. How could you say to someone who lives their entire life starving, oh yeah, this will give you some kind of spirituality? Now, when you look at it in this context, when you look at it as what Maharaj intended Langar to be, then you understand why so many great Gursikhs lay down their lives for the Langar. Because it's not the Langar, like I said, we think of living in this country. That's not the Langar that Maharaj intended, necessarily. We all know the famous Sakya of Bhai Daru Singh. Now, why was Bhai Daru Singh arrested originally? I'm sure you all know. For giving food to the Singhs in the jungle, did you say? Very good Singh. That's true, but also, Bhai Daru Singh Ji, if you look at their jivan, Bhai Daru Singh Ji lived with his mother and his sister. Both his mother and sister were widows. And Bhai Daru Singh Ji, they had a little piece of land and they'd cultivate that. And whatever roti came from that, they'd have a very little bit and they'd distribute it. And it was to the needy. It wasn't just to the Singhs, it was to whoever. And at that time, because the Singhs were in the jungles, they also happened to be Singhs that they were providing langar for. So this constant Singh narrowing of everything. The Singhs did this for the Singhs. They did it for the needy, they did it for everyone. And this Sakhi we particularly know because that's what Bhai Daru Singh Ji was arrested for. Can someone tell me what the charge against Bhai Daru Singh was?
I think the Muslim daughter was kidnapped by Mughals and he tried to protect her. So that's why he stays there. And someone complained that Baiji was serving numbers of things as well.
Okay. That's true. That's one of the Sakhis that you hear. What was Bhai Daru Singh Ji's the charge against him? Sorry, I know I'm being a bit lawyerly, but what was the charge against him? Does anyone know? Andy? That was the option, but what was the charge? What was he charged with when? Hanji? Yes, Uncle is 100% right. Bhai Daru Singh Ji was arrested for waging war against the state. Now, who was the first person in Sikhi to be arrested for that? For waging war against the state? Hanji? Guru Arjan Dev Ji. Guru Arjan Dev Ji Maharaj, when he was arrested for waging war against the state. Now, when the Sakya tell us that 3 individuals came to arrest Bhai Daru Singh Ji, what was the first thing that Bhai Daru Singh Ji said when they came? Langar Shukru. Come, fine, you want to arrest me, that's fine. Shukru Bala Langar Shak ke jao. The importance of langar, the importance of what these things mean, have been lost on us today. Now I want to skip forward to another individual who's unfortunately his name I don't know. There's a book called Black Thunder, and it refers to Operation Black Thunder in 1988 at the Barside. Now it's written by someone called Sarabjit Singh, and he's a police officer, and I don't recommend the book, but this is something that I one of the only good things I took out of it. In that he talks about a period when the police and the army say to the Singhs within Darbar Sahib, we'll have a ceasefire for a little while. This is the second attack on Darbar, or third attack technically on Darbar Sahib, between 1984 and 1988. And during this ceasefire, he writes in this book about, so everything's quiet, there's a ceasefire, and they see this one thing, and he's got like a kapra, and he's got something underneath his shawl, and he runs out into the Parakarma, and bearing in mind this is supposed to be a ceasefire, and he runs as fast as he can from one end to the other, and they shoot him and they kill him. The book never explains why, if there's a ceasefire, he's shooting, but okay. And they say we drag this thing's body to the side and we, pick up this shawl and we see what's underneath. It's langar. It's langar for the things. That thing is running as fast as he can during an army operation on Darbar Sahib, not taking arms, he's taking langar. So when you look at the importance of langar in this context, you understand why people die, why people lay down their lives for this right to food. In the West, we talk about the right to food. We're so mesmerized by concepts in the West. The Universal Declaration of Human Rights only came about 60 years ago. Things have been laying down their lives for the right to food for 500 years. If I was to ask you, what is the largest trade in the world, what would you say? Sorry, largest illegal trade in the world. Not illegal trade. Arms? Uncle's 100% right. Arms is the largest illegal trade in the world. What's the second largest? Drugs. No, it's not drugs. Andy? Human trafficking. Human trafficking is the second largest trade, illegal trade in the world. Now I want to talk about a historian called Cunningham. This is what Cunningham wrote. Now can anyone tell me what this particular quote refers to? Cunningham is talking about the things at the time of Abdal. So he says, the greatest act of chivalry in the East, perhaps it is the greatest act of chivalry in the world's history. When returning home after his fifth invasion of India, Ahmed Shah Abdali was taking 2,200 Hindu women and girls back to Afghanistan. And he was doing this so that he could sell them in the slave markets in Afghanistan. And along the way, he thought, fine, my soldiers can use these women along the way if they're happy, and when they get to Afghanistan, we can sell them. Human trafficking. It was at that time that the Singhs, who had been in the jungles for months without any proper food, any proper aid of any kind, they'd finally got together a handful of Singhs, and someone had been gracious enough to give them langar. So they're sitting there, and as they all gather, they're about to have langar, and they hear about these 2,200 women being taken. They leave langar where it is, and they go to Goindwa, and they attack Abdali and his forces, and they release 2,200 women. Each one of those women, they were mainly from Maharashtra. It took the Singhs weeks to get them back home. Weeks. So the Bibiyan would sit on the horses and the Singhs would walk alongside them, and they walked for weeks to get them home. the greatest act of chivalry, perhaps in the world. Human trafficking today is the second largest illegal trade in the world. Where are we as Sikhs? What are we contributing to human trafficking? Has it even registered with us? Or is it just not my problem again? Some of you might have heard of Vaddakalugara. Again, this is the time of Abdali in 1762. We Sikhs lost 30,000 people during this, the Vaddakalugara. A week after that, someone came, a Brahmin from Kasur came and he said, this particular Mughal, he's taken my wife and I need you to go there and get her back. He's taken her by force. Within a week of losing 30,000 men and women and children, the Singhs rode to Kasur and released that Bibi. Human trafficking is the second largest trade in the world. I like to think of myself, I've been working in human rights for coming on to over a decade, and I like to think of myself as being quite up to date or knowing my field. I was shocked when last year it was reported that India is the fourth most dangerous country to be a woman in the world. And I've worked in countries like Sudan. Just to give you an example, I don't know how aware you are of the situation in Sudan, but they've had a civil war there for many, many years. And one of the projects that we were working on, I worked with an organisation called the Sudanese Organisation Against Torture. And one of the things that, one of the projects of this particular organisation was working within IDPs, internally displaced people's camps. So we'd go to the camps and the organisation would ask the question, a lot of the women there, they developed severe health problems living in these camps, and they thought it was an issue of sanitation. So, they said, okay, well, you know what, we need greater sanitation in these camps. This is, there's no kind of facilities for them to go use the toilet, etc. But when these women were questioned a little bit further, the women said, actually, we choose not to go to the toilet. And why is that? We choose not to go to the toilet. We hold it in for days because at night time, militia men come and they come and rape us in these camps. And what we do is, when they try and rape us, that's when we open our bowels as a deterrent. Now, Sudan doesn't come in the top 4 countries around the world, but India does. India is the 4th most dangerous place in the world to be a woman.
What are the first 3?
First country is Afghanistan. Afghanistan, Congo, Pakistan, and India. Those are the top 4. We talk about genocide, the genocide of the Sikhs. We talk about that a lot, and rightly so, and so we should. 10 million girls in 20 years. If that isn't genocide, and it's not something that someone else is doing, that's why maybe we're not so forceful about it, because as Sikhs, we love the victim mentality. This has been done to us, this has been done, this is what we're doing, so we don't really talk about it so much. But 10 million people not to exist anymore, and those killings to be done by your own family, what kind of worse genocide could there be? She was thrown in the garbage dump outside the village for dogs that ate her. Her only fault, she was the 4th girl born in a poor family. And this is a quote by Hashinda Kaur. I'm sure some of you have heard of her. She's a doctor who has campaigned hugely on the issue of female infanticide. But we like to think, these unpad bande, unhone nahi pata wo kar dene. Chandigarh is the most affluent, one of the most affluent cities in India, but it's the worst ratio of women to men. So it's not something that the poor are doing that we can distance ourselves from. Something that well-educated, well-to-do, middle-class families are doing. In Sikhi, we have a huge level of tolerance. We're taught so much tolerance. We hear all the fucking of Guru Nanak Dev travelling to all these different places, and whether it's Gordar Rakesh, who today we'd say is a serial killer, or we have all of these examples given to us that they is the biggest thing, one of the biggest things we have. But the Khalsa draws a line. And where does that line exist? Mara says, te roti sanj nahi karni, kudi marna. Yeah? Why is that line drawn? Because in the last 20 years, 10 million girls have been killed. Marriage, when marriage says it, we think, kudi marna, and that's it, we move on. Marriage is talking about all the biggest issues in society that are relevant today. The Khalsa draws the line even at kudi marna. If I was to say to you that there's a new test, that when you're pregnant, they do a scan and they tell you that what religion your child's going to be. And if it's going to be a Sikh, people kill it. Just imagine that. You and I would be in uproar, we'd be on the channels, we'd be protesting, we love all of that. That's our favourite pastime. We'd be doing all of that. But because it's just babies, it's fetuses, it's not my problem. It's not a Sikh issue, is it? 1 in 4 people, according to statistics, are killing their daughters. So that's all our relatives. If it's not people in this room, it's certainly our relatives. But again, it's not interesting enough, and it's not, there's no victim mentality attached to it. We can't blame the Indian state, and we can't blame this state and that, If I was to say to you that if this was prevalent 20 years before the last 20 years, none of these Singniya would have been here. All the Singniya you see on the screen, they were shaheed either in Darbar Sahib or in the following years in what happened in Punjab. Maybe they wouldn't have been here if their parents had decided to do what so many families decide to do today. Go away and read about these women. I'm just going to mention one of them because I'm limited to time. This BBC closest to me on the bottom hand row. Does anyone know her name? It's Bibi Jaswant Kaur. Bibi Jaswant Kaur was head of the women's wing in the All India Sikh Student Federation. And when the Darbar Sahib attack happened, she was one of the last people to be shaheed. While she was studying, while she was at university, she joined this federation, and she became such a powerful speaker. She was really well respected, and she became the head of the women's wing. Now, when they were when the last people were fighting in the Darbar Sahib, 7 days in, they had this one room where there was continuous firing from, and the army bombed because they couldn't kill where this firing was coming from, so they bombed it. And when they went in, they say to the ankles there were cartridge shells. This is the army's account, cartridge shells, and there's 2 women in there. One of them was Bibi Jaswant Kaur. And they said when they did the post-mortems, their arms were full of bruises from the kickback to the guns that they were firing with. 7 days in, and two of the last people to take Shahid at the bar side. In any action, if any action occurs in this village, every single male is going to be taken out and shot. Then we're going to take all the women to our camp, and there we're going to create a new breed for Punjab. We take things like International Women's Day for those of us who celebrate it in any form for granted. This is what was happening in 1991 on Women's Day in a village in Punjab. What people like KPS Gill, what people like Ribeiro, other people in Punjab couldn't achieve by trying to kill us, by trying to destroy us, we've done. You and I have done. We've changed. Punjab di Nasala, we've changed it. Why do we need people like that when we can do it ourselves? The kind of things that happened in Punjab, the kind of things that happened to women in Punjab, I can't even say from this stage to you. Yet we're committing genocide in Punjab every single day. It's not my, but again, I live in this country, it's not my problem. As long as I can do my bit, whatever that may be, I'm happy. That's our mentality today. So when Mara says Kuri Mar, that's our line. There's a reason for every single thing. Sikhi gives you all the answers to problems in the modern world. We haven't implemented them, therefore we don't know. We haven't implemented what Mara just said to us, therefore we don't know. Inspirations. I've spoken a lot today about maybe some quite difficult topics, but I don't want you to think that there's no hope and there have been great people in our lifetime who continue to inspire. Bibi Jaswant Kaur. Can anyone tell me who he is? Human rights lawyer who became Shahid. Bibi Jaswant Kaur was the last person to die in Punjab in an encounter related to the insurgency in Punjab. The same person who was walking around, going to villages, documenting cases, he is ironically the last person to be killed in that same way. Bibi Jaswant Kaur and Jaspal Singh Dhillon were two men, and they were travelling around Punjab documenting cases of people who had disappeared. And they were continuing to document, and they realised that this is going to take a huge amount of time, resources that the Sikhs weren't willing to give them at that time. No one was interested. We were talking about 1995. So what they decided to do, very cleverly, was that they decided that they would go to cremation grounds. Because when the police kill you, your body has to go somewhere. It's not given back to your family. They still have to get rid of it. So where do they take it? They take it to cremation grounds. And what they decided to do, both of them got dressed up and pretended they were officials with the government. So they went to 3 crematoriums in Amritsar. They went to Patti, Taran Taran and Durgana Mandir, 3 crematoriums. And they went in there and they said to the Munshi, the clerk, get me the records. The way they spoke, their demeanour, the Munshi thought, they must be from the government, quickly ran and gave them, started showing them the books of all the people that have been cremated. So when they started looking, saw in these books that the police bring in 5 unidentified bodies, 10 unidentified bodies. But ironically, India is such a country of bureaucracy that the crematorium still had to account for the wood. So 5 bodies, all piled up together, this is how much wood was required. The list wasn't kept because of the unidentified bodies. The list was kept so they could account for the wood used. So what Bibi Jaswant Singh and Jaswant Singh Kaur decided to do, they said to him, right, give us this, we have to make a copy of this. They managed to do that in 1 day in 3 crematoriums before the police found out. And when they went public with this, Bibi Jaswant Singh Kaur in 1995 was outside his house washing his car in the morning in Mohali. He had a journalist friend inside waiting to interview him about this discovery. He said, oh, let me just finish off with this, So he's inside. 4 men come in a blacked out van. They bundle Bibi Jaswant Singh Kaur into that van, and he's disappeared. How ironic. Can you imagine, as Bibi Jaswant Singh Kaur sitting at the back of that van, he's thinking of all the Sakhiyan, all the places he went to, all the families he spoke to, and this is what's happened to them, and now it's happening to you. And he was made to disappear. His body was never found. We know that he was tortured because people saw him in particular police stations. When I was travelling in India, I went to Tamil Nadu, and there was a lawyer there, a very good lawyer who's working in human rights, and his family is quite well to do. He lives in sort of 7, 8 people in one room, and I asked him, so what inspired you to do human rights? There's no money in human rights, and I'd met his father the previous night, and he goes, oh, Jaswant Singh Kaur. I was shocked. He'd read a translation of Bibi Jaswant Singh Kaur's life, a Tamil translation, and he, being very prominent at the bar, having a huge, very lucrative career ahead of him, decided to leave all of that and do human rights. How many people in this room have looked at Bibi Jaswant Singh Kaur's speech in Canada on YouTube? 15 people, if that. 15, maybe 20. You don't know who Bibi Jaswant Singh Kaur is. You're not listening to his speeches. You're not inspired, but other people are. People are changing their lives and changing their careers because of Bibi Jaswant Singh Kaur. This lady you see with a feeding tube to her nose. Does anyone know who she is? This lady. Very good. Finally, I've spoken about this in many occasions, and you're probably one of the only people who I've ever know her name. That makes me really happy. Iram Shamila has been fasting, has been on a book hartal for 10 years. She's been forcefully fed in India today. Why is she? Because she's protesting against the Armed Forces Special Powers Act in Nagaland. She was arrested. She said, "Main bhukh hartal karni hai." They force feed her to this day. That woman has been like that for 10 years. Why? For her people, for the fact that her people are being oppressed. And we recently did a conference in Delhi, and her brother came, a conference on Punjab, and he was talking to me about Bibi Jaswant Singh Kaur. 10 years to be on a book hartal for 10 years and to be forcefully fed. This lady is from Nagaland. Those people in Nagaland have been fighting for independence for many, many years, and they continue to. I'm sure most of you would know, I hope you would, the picture just below that, of who that is. Bhagat Pooran Singh. Bhagat Pooran Singh, like I said, many of you will know, he would travel around Amritsar collecting, we talked about Natami and Khan, the Asra and the Asra. People who were rejected, who were dumped in the streets of Amritsar due to disabilities, due to such degrees of poverty, children, he literally would collect them, and he started Bingalwai. One of the most inspiring books that I read when I was coming into Sikhi was Garland Around My Neck. And that's a book about Bhagat Pooran Singh. I recommend it to everyone. It is one of the most touching books I think I've probably ever read. The picture in the middle represents someone called, not the individual on screen, but it represents him in my mind. It's someone called Harjeet Singh. I spent some time in Punjab doing human rights documentation, and you get to hear accounts from families of the most horrendous, unimaginable things. But Harjeet Singh's story I want to share with you. Harjeet Singh was 17 years old, and his cousin had joined the Khalsa Liberation Force at that time. And he was on his way to college. Harjeet Singh had, no political inclinations, had no kind of, he was Amritari, but no, he was, wasn't joined to any Jathabandi. He was just a young man on his way to college. And he is picked up by the police. They're roaming the area. I've heard of, the majority of my time is spent in Gurdaspur. Is anyone here from Gurdaspur area? No one?
I'm a parent.
Hanji?
I'm a parent.
Your parents, okay. Gurdaspur is one of the most affected areas in the whole of Punjab. A lot of the Shaheed Singhs and Singhniya come from Gurdaspur. And I've heard of men, I've spoken to men who at that time were probably in their 80s, who today in their 90s, touching 100, who they say, "Chalo, sanu army de gaddiyan di awaaz aandi si, we just lie in the fields stuff there. Try and hide behind the wheat, whatever they're growing, the corn." So Harjeet Singh is going to college early in the morning on his cycle, and a police van pulls up. And where are you going? College. There's two of them. They're both taken. That's the only thing they ask him, where are you going? College. Taken into the car, into the van. This story is told to me by his parents. They don't have any other sons, it's only Harjeet Singh. Outside of the village there's a school, and that school was converted into a torture centre. And they close the school down, kids go home, we're taking this over for maybe 2-3 months. And they would take people there from the surrounding, maybe about 7 villages, and they would take them to this place, and that's where people were tortured. They'd open all the khirkiyan, all the windows, so everyone, it's not like now, we're talking about, the 80s. When people were screaming, when they were being tortured, their voices would carry into the villages. So you're killing 2 birds with 1 stone, literally. You're not only making people scared in their villages, but you're destroying lives within this place. Now, Harjeet Singh's father said, he used to be a milkman. So he goes, I'd drive around this school. He's scared to go there and ask for his son. He wouldn't, he would never come back. He goes, so I used to cycle, try and hear out for the scream, see if I can distinguish my son amongst everyone else. He wasn't able to. They didn't ever see Harjeet Singh again. 3 months later, someone came to their house, Siana Singh, and they said, are you the parents of Harjeet Singh? They said, Hanji, have you brought some news? Come in. Bring them in, sit them down, and they say, the Singh says to him, the reason I've come is that I met many people where I've been tortured in many different cells. This man had been himself tortured for 8 months, taken to different police stations. And he goes, Jalo sanu the kotde police wale. He goes, Sadi na jaan nikadi, we scream so loudly. He goes, it's ringing in your ears after, you're not even sure if you're screaming anymore. That's how loudly you're screaming when they do this to you. And we talk a lot about Singhs being tortured, and it's all. The one thing that I heard continuously from these families and people who were tortured, they said, police, they would do anything. They would go underground, they'd disappear, but they'd say, I'd never want to be in that position again. it's the worst kind of imaginable things that happen to you. And he said that Asido Janresi, we would scream and scream and scream, and he goes, I was lucky enough to share the cell with Harjeet Singh. There was sort of 9 men in a cell, 9, 10, depending on how many people they were bringing in at the time. And he goes, whenever he was tortured, he didn't scream. And he goes, I turned around and asked him, I said, like, you know, where are you from? Who are you? Like, he said, the way it was there, you didn't even talk to anyone, just in case they told you something and then you were tortured and you'd reveal it about them. So you wouldn't even ask the thing standing next to you, you wouldn't even ask his name, you wouldn't even ask where he's from, just in case that when they're torturing you, something slips out. He goes, but I had to, because I had to find out why this 17-year-old, when we are grown men, this 17-year-old was able to do this. And his answer to them, his simple answer was, I don't want to scream if it brings dagger to someone else's heart. All the villages around, all the people around, and I don't want them to be scared because of my screams. I don't want them to stop doing what is right. 17 years old, the worst situation you can't even begin to imagine, but you have the soji, you have the thinking to think outside of yourself, even outside the 4 walls. Say, the people who will be riding past, that they don't do what is right. This is a letter that was written to you, and it was written to me. When nations wake up, even history begins to shiver. During such momentous movements, a Banda Bahadur bids farewell to his peace dwelling and destroys a state of oppression like Sirhind. A Che Guevara turns down a ministership of Cuba, loads a gun on his breast and entrenches against the enemies in the forest of Bolivia. And Nelson Mandela rejects the ideology of apartheid and prefers to spend his life in a dark prison cell. How many of us know who Che Guevara is? Again, about maybe 12 people? 13 people? If I was to ask you what the ideology of Che Guevara is, how many of you could answer that? And I would ask. What was his basic ideology? Angie?
It was form of communism, everyone, collectivism, everyone helping out everyone else out. More if you like, for the poor against the
landowners, yeah, Angie. Uncle's 100% right. In its nutshell, it was basically the oppressed, the weak, the poor fighting and rising up against landowners and other those around them. Now, so Che Guevara and Nelson Mandela. In comparison with the violence of the enemy, the violence of the Khalsa abounds in divine qualities and spiritual blessings. The Khalsa has to give such a divine form and beauty to its struggle that it may even burden the conscience of the enemy with the realization of its own sin. Such a moral miracle will be possible only if the concentration on the Guru of the Khalsa and rhythm of the Guru Granth Sahib remain fully connected and intact. The Guru Granth Sahib is the main source of our life stream and spiritual power. These 2 men wrote that letter. You and I like to think we're well educated. We're educated in the West, we hold good jobs. I could Google Che Guevara in 2 seconds and find out everything I need to know. These men, 20, 25 years ago, are talking about how nations are to be forged. They're talking about Che Guevara in Cuba. They're talking about Nelson Mandela. Not through Google, not through all the advances we have. In this room, people can't answer. A majority of you can't answer who Che Guevara is. So you know when you say these people in Punjab, or these people who laid down their lives, you know, Pinda Toisi, yeah, they had a bit of Sikhi Jazba and they died. These were the cream of the crop. You and I are just the leftovers. You and I are just the leftovers. These men were talking about such profound, intricate, intellectual things, concepts, that you and I don't know 20 years later. And when were they talking about it? Not sitting at home on a Friday night. This letter was sent, this letter was written when they were given the death penalty. When when it was said to them that you're going to be hung, this is their letter to you and me. This letter is written. There's another section that I don't have up here that I'll read to you. The Khalsa is inseparably and lovingly related to the people of India. The millions of Dalits, the workers who earn their living through honest labour, the Muslims and other minorities, and all the homeless and destitute, who have remained oppressed and exploited by Brahmanism for centuries. They are all our kin. Our master, rider of the blue horse, Guru Gobind Singh, recognized them much earlier. And they rose to generalships in the army of the Khalsa. Thrones and honours kissed their feet. I'm given the death penalty, but I'm talking about other people who don't have a voice. I'm talking about Dalits, I'm talking about people of other minorities. I can talk about my struggle, I can talk about the Khalsa struggle, what happened in Punjab, but I choose that moment when I'm about to die, to give a voice to others who don't have that voice. We talked about homelessness and destitution, that's what they were talking to you and I about. So they're talking to you about different movements around the world. They're talking to you about the people who have no voice, and they're talking about even when they're facing the death penalty, they're trying to pyar naal samjha to the enemy. Face the enemy with love. Have we read that? Give such a divine form and beauty to its struggle. Have we done that? The Khalsa struggle, have we given it any kind of divine beauty? You know, in our families, if someone is on their deathbed, it's like a very Punjabi thing, isn't it? Someone's on their deathbed and they say, "Eh kar di, oh kar di," to their son or to their daughter. And if they were to do that, you spend your entire life trying to fulfill that wish. And your entire life, if my parents on their deathbed said something to me, I cried my whole entire life. The guilt of it would be like, I have to do this. This is what these Gursikhs are saying to you and me. This is our family. We haven't brought beauty, and we haven't brought a divine form to the Khalsa struggle. We failed. Yet we don't have the guilt. Two highly intelligent, extremely well-read individuals were hung in 1992. I'm not going to take too much longer now. I'm aware of the time. It's a very famous quote, but maybe in the context of this talk it even takes on a different form. Where do the Sikhs live? Again, at the time of Delhi. These Sikhs live in jungles and sleep on horseback. If you wish to learn the art of war, come face to face with them in the battlefield. They will demonstrate it, the art of war, to you in such a way that one and all will shower praise in them. This is coming from the mouth of the enemy. Last year, the London School of Economics did a survey, and they found that Sikhs in the UK were the second wealthiest community after the Jews. When Singhs were on horseback and living in jungles, this is what we were doing, the greatest acts of chivalry in the world. Now you and me, we have money, we have a nice car. This is what we have. Second wealthiest community. Yet there's parwars in Punjab who, when you go to their house to even document their case, to find out what's happened, they don't have tea to give you. Yet you and I are the second wealthiest community. I'm going to finish up with two quotes. Bertrand Russell, does anyone know who he is? He was a philosopher and a mathematician, yes. And he won the Nobel Prize for Literature in 1950. We're, considered sort of one of the best British philosophers, if you like, and an atheist his entire life. That if some lucky men survived the onslaught of the Third World War of atomic and hydrogen bombs, then the Sikh religion will be the only means of guiding them. It has the capability, but the Sikhs have not brought out in the broad daylight the splendid doctrines of this religion, which has come into existence for the benefit of entire mankind. This is their greatest sin, and the Sikhs cannot be freed of it. Our greatest sin. That we haven't understood Gurbani, that we haven't understood what the lives of the Gurus were meant to teach us, that we haven't learned from the great Gurus. Even when they write you a letter, it's still lost on us. How many of you are parents in the audience? Are all of you? Some of you, I want you to think back to when you gave the Bibi, when you had a newborn, when you recently gave birth, and to the things. It was, there may be a lot of emotions that you went through. Can someone name me some of the things that you guys were thinking? It was a very emotional time. You look at your newborn, you're overwhelmed. You're so amazed by what Maharaj has given you. There's an academic work done by a French academic. It's called Princess Amongst the Lions, a study of women insurgents in Punjab. This report came out two years ago. So when you and I are sitting in our comfortable lives, there are people who are actually out there trying to record a history of Frenchman. And this is the account of one of the women. This is amongst, an interview with her. And she doesn't say this in any kind of profound way. It's one of the things she happens to mention. So when you talk about inspiration, I remained active in my group until the 8th month of pregnancy. Shortly before I was to deliver, my husband and I left the group and took shelter in a secure location. After a few months, my child was strong enough, and we went back with the fighters. But it was tough for me. 3 or 4 times I had to take part in encounters with my son on my shoulder. So after a few incidences like these, I left him with families of sympathizers. I'm going to leave it there. If I've said anything that's hurt or upset or misguided you in any way, I truly, truly am sorry, and please forgive me as your sister. Waheguru Ji Ka Khalsa, Waheguru Ji Ki Fateh.